Well, New York Attorney General demands that hospitals in New York mutilate young children in defiance of President Trump's executive order on protecting children from the chemical and surgical mutilation. Letitia James has told hospitals in New York that complying with the recent White House executive order that will stop sex changes for minors could violate state law, creating a conflict between the federal and state government, according to the New York Times. Now, if you're new here, hit that subscribe button. Stay up to date with all of our new videos because we have a lot to dig into here about these recent claims from New York Attorney General Letitia James. Now, Letitia James, obviously the same Attorney General that politically prosecuted President Trump, tried to force him to put up about $500 million in collateral in a New York hush money case. The same James is now claiming that if these hospital systems in New York withhold services from transgender individuals while also offering services to cisgender people, or as you could just say, like normal people, boys and girls, cisgender individuals, that it is discrimination under New York City law, New York state law. Now, in the recent executive order that President Trump signed, it states, quote, "It is the policy of the United States that it will not fund, sponsor, promote, assist, or support the so-called transition of a child from one sex to another, and it will rigorously enforce all laws that prohibit or limit these destructive and life-altering procedures." Now, the order demands and lays out a process that the heads of all executive department agencies that they immediately take appropriate steps to ensure that institutions that receive federal research or education grants end the chemical mutilation and surgical mutilation of children. Otherwise, that these institutions are going to risk federal grants that they receive. Now, as we all should know, federal law is going to trump state law. It is almost ridiculous that Letitia James is going to come out and say something like this. This is just ridiculous. How demented are you? How much money did the big pharma industry have to give you for you to say something like this? Like, this is the most absurd thing. Like, when I'm reading these articles and trying to dig into this, just infuriated me. How could it be that when you have a president who is trying to protect young children, the most vulnerable people in our society, from these sick, demented individuals who want to mutilate them through chemical processes or surgical processes, and the Attorney General is going to come on and say that you are in violation of state law and that we are going to come after you if you stop performing these chemical and surgical procedures. It is just ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Now, just days after the executive order was signed at the White House, like I said, as reported by the New York Times, Langone Health, which is one of the larger medical or hospital systems in New York, canceled the appointment, and we've got the article right here. New York hospital stops treating 2 children after Trump's trans care. The hospital canceled their appointment the same week. An executive order from President Trump threatened to punish doctors and hospitals for offering gender-affirming care. How about let's replace offering gender-affirming care with mutilating children? Trump threatens to punish doctors and hospitals for mutilating children. I think that's a better way that you could word it, but who am I to say anything? But like I said, they canceled these 2 appointments of 2 12-year-olds who were supposed to receive puberty blocker implants. So basically, it's a little medical device that's implanted in their arm that slowly releases these chemicals into their body, these puberty blockers. And it's reported that other hospital systems in New York have also halted sex change operations for anybody under the age of 19 in response to that executive order from Trump. And they've really just stated that they're just trying to figure out what they need to do. This is by far one of my favorite moves by President Trump, signing this executive order we're going to revoke funding. There are major financial implications. Now, unfortunately, we can't go back and change the past. And the detransitioners in America can't, obviously we need to open it up so they can get retribution. They can get justice for what has happened to them. They were children. They were vulnerable. They went to the adults in their life. And what did the adults do? They turned around and tried to chemically and surgically mutilate them, scarring them forever. Their bodies will never be the same ever again. Now, like I said, the financial implications are going to be enormous. Even for a large hospital system like Langone Health, which is, I believe they work with a New York university there. And so in a recent, let's see, it was from the National Institute of Health. In a recent year, the medical school alone that's attached to this hospital received $815 million in grants and awards from the National Institute of Health. How sick? How sick? We have almost $1 billion in a single year going to these facilities that are then turning around and mutilating children. Now, here's a little tidbit about New York. A spokesman for NYU Langone Health, Steve Rita, declined to comment, saying that he did not have any information he could share. Langone is one of several major medical centers in the city with transgender health programs for youth and adolescent. About 3% of teenagers ages 13 to 17 in New York State said they are transgender. About twice the national average, according to one recent survey. Interesting fact. 3% of teenagers are in New York State consider themselves transgender. Double the national average. So what's going on in New York? What exactly is happening in New York? Is it maybe that it's being pushed heavily by the school system? Is it that the Attorney General will threaten to sue hospital systems that do not provide these mutilation surgeries? It is just absolutely ridiculous that this is where we're at right now. And with a hospital that's receiving almost $1 billion a year from the NIH. Now, in response to these cancellation of two 12-year-old, I don't even want to call them transgenders because this is more the parents. At 12, I look back when I was 12 years old, I didn't know what the hell I was. I didn't know what the hell I was 2 or 3 years ago. Who I was, I'm still becoming the person that I'm going to be. But if I'm so insecure about who I am on the inside, why is it that mutilating yourself is the answer? Why is it that mutilation is the first answer that these people are going to? But in response to these cancellations, the Democratic Socialists of America, it's hard to call them Democrat Socialists, more like the demonic Socialist of America, organized a protest on Monday night where they demanded sex changes for minors. Let's take a look at this.
Shame on you! NYU! Shame on you! NYU! Shame on you! NYU! Shame on you! NYU! Shame on you! Excuse me. Shame on you! Shame on you! NYU! Shame on you! Fall in line! Shame on you! Shame on you! NYU!
It's kind of even sick just to watch this here, but a couple of things I'd like to point out in here. There were a number of protesters that carried signs, one that read, "Protect Trans Futures." Well, you know what? If you mutilate this child's body so badly, they may not have a future. They may be miserable in their future. Whose future are you protecting, to be honest with you? And then another person held a sign that said, "Break the silence." What silence are we breaking? The only silence that has been broken is by President Trump calling out what these people would deem gender reassignment surgeries and gender affirming care as child mutilation. That's the only silence that's been broken. I don't know what silence that these people are referring to. And then the last one that, just gets me going. Don't capitulate hate. And now this is all from Breitbart here. Let's take a look at this. Here we go. Don't capitulate hate. What's more hateful? Protecting children from irreversible chemical and surgical procedures, or looking at an innocent 10, 11, 12-year-old child and knowingly and willingly mutilating their body parts that include double mastectomies, chemical castration. It is just sick. What is more hateful? The people who are going ahead and saying, yes, you 12-year-old, you can change your gender. Let's get you pumped up with hormones. You can't even go buy a drink. You can't buy a cigarette. You can't get a tattoo. You can't rent a car. You can't even rent a car when you're 16 or you're 18. But now we can change your gender. You can chemically and surgically, irreversibly change your future. Imagine when I was 12 years, I'm thinking back when I was 12 years old. I was in 8th grade. The decisions, if I made a decision in 8th grade that ultimately affected me for the rest of the life, I would be so furious with the people around me. I tried to make decisions at 12 years old because as every 12-year-old, it's tough. The world is a tough place. It's tough growing up as a young person, just period, in the world. Life is confusing. You have to understand all the realities of life. And then you're going to throw in this garbage about how you can chemically change yourself. Do you think I felt a little insecure when I was 12? I had hair that was halfway down my back. I looked like I look back at pictures of me, I'm like, God, my God, who let me walk out of the house looking like this? And you're going to tell me that kid is the same one who can now say, I want to change my gender. And then we're going to go have surgical procedures or chemical procedures, the implantation of devices that slowly release these chemicals that absolutely destroy these kids' future. It's just demonic to even think about how something like this could happen. Now, along with that, there was a trans activist outside of the NYU who spoke outside of the hospital and she was proclaiming that she's a proud mother of a transgender man. What kind of garbage is that? I'm the proud mother of a man. I'm the proud mother of a woman. Why does it have to be a transgender man? Because it's all about clout. These people want attention. You don't think that when I was a kid that there were things that I did because I wanted to get attention? That because I thought something was cool? There are more instances than not of times when I thought something was cool, and so that's why I did it. 12-year-olds cannot make decisions for themselves. That's why they do not have legal autonomy over their bodies. As we all know, side effects from these sex change drugs and procedures can be severe that often are irreversible. It's mutilation that causes infertility. Even the Mayo Clinic has found that puberty blockers have long-term impacts on bone growth, bone density, and bone spurts. Now, there are many, many transitioners who undergo these procedures and later reverse course. Many of these, what we call detransitioners, speak out about the irreversible damage and the mental torment that they have experienced, now knowing that they're never going to be able to live a normal life ever again. Their bodies are forever changed, and there's nothing that can be done about it. Now, researchers in the Netherlands have tracked more than 2,700 children from the ages of 11 to their mid-20s. I think 25 is where they kind of cut it off. And they found that roughly 11% of children were gender confused at some point in their childhood, where they were questioning their gender. Now, by the time that same group of 2,700 people who they found about 300 people that were confused about their gender at some point in their childhood, by the time they had reached 25, that number had dropped to below 3%. 3% of those people then said they were, quote, sometimes disconnected or they were discontent with their gender. The results are crystal clear. Most children have doubt about one's identity during their teenage years, and it is absolutely normal. Most people don't know who they are, and they work through it. But as an adult, it is our job to help these children find themselves and to go into and help them grow into the person that they know they can be. not to encourage them to mutilate themselves to the point where there is irreversible damage. And if you don't remember, being a kid in the world is confusing and tough. And the last thing they need is to make irreversible decisions for themselves. At the root of all of this, they're actors. Along with the proliferation of the gender ideology on social media that ultimately promotes the false idea that human beings can be a different sex than what they were born with. God gave you a biological sex when you were conceived. When you were conceived, God chose this for you. This is what God wanted. You cannot change your biological sex. You cannot. It is not a thing. And to even further it, the gender ideology their complex claims that they have that individuals should take sex change drugs and get sex change procedures to align with their outward appearance and how they feel on the inside. It's just ridiculous. And President Trump has repeatedly vowed to end, during his presidential campaign, that he would reverse course on the Biden administration's embrace of gender ideology. He promised he would protect women's sports, women's spaces, and to protect children from the mutilation from these drugs and procedures. All actions that he has taken within his first 2 weeks of his second term. And many of his cabinet selections have a history of supporting the biological realities that there are two sexes, male and female. Two genders, male and female. And with the control of the House and the Senate, they have expressed plans to move forward with this as well, with these ideas that there are only two genders. President Trump has taken so many actions in his first 2 weeks, whether it is to cut off federal funding, whether it is to go to comb through all U.S. grants to make sure they're not funding DEI initiatives or sex change procedures for minors. From the government healthcare TRICARE, they are no longer offering gender reassignment coverage through there. And the same thing, if someone gets private insurance through the federal government, the federal employee benefits, any health policy they get will not cover gender mutilation surgeries. It's just not going to happen. And I am very proud to say I voted for President Trump, and this is why I voted for President Trump. To change this insanity that we had during the Biden administration, where they embrace this radical gender ideology. It's like they tried to do a complete rewrite of Title IX to basically change out the definition of sex for gender identity, which basically just nullifies all of Title IX. Like, what's the point of even having Title IX if it's just based off gender identity? Where schools would then be forced to, if there was someone was misgendered, schools would have, under Biden's Title IX changes, would have been forced to investigate instances of dead naming, where basically you drop the person who transitions previous name, and they would also have to investigate misgendering, kids who misgender a transgender, which is just absolutely ridiculous. You talk about government inefficiencies and inefficiencies in our school system, that would be a major inefficiency. And then he would have stopped schools from blocking transgender females, so people who are born male, who have a mental illness and believe they are female, from being in female spaces, locker rooms, bathrooms, sports teams. Thank God Biden's Title IX was not enacted. That federal court struck it down, and then Biden finally gave up at the end of his term, like the whimpering old dog he is. This is just disgusting that this is even going on. But we're going to keep you up to date if there are lawsuits that come out of New York from this. Obviously, it sounds like most of these New York health facilities have stopped performing these procedures, and they've paused the appointments, which I am very, very happy about. This is a huge win for America, for the conservative movement, and for children, for vulnerable people in the world. This is a major, major victory for them, that they will be protected as children. For the same reason that you can't hit your kids. You can be prosecuted if you hit your kids. But the Democrats think, now that a child wants to become a different gender, you can absolutely mutilate them and cause irreversible damage to them, and that's okay. And we're going to actually go after you, the hospital system, who's refusing to provide this. So we're going to keep you up to date on if there's federal funding pulled, if there are appointments that do follow through now that this has happened, if Letitia James does follow through and decides to sue some of these health or these hospital networks. But as for now, that's it for today. Appreciate you tuning in. Drop a like down below if you like this video.